In this module, we discuss principles related to equality. To illustrate the confusion and different contexts of the word equality, consider the following examples. Are these numbers equal? Are these people equal? Are these snowflakes equal? The answer is yes and no. The numbers are all equally numerical digits, but all unequal in the actual quantities they represent. The people are all equally human, male and female. They are equal in their humanity and equal in their natural rights. They are unequal in their natural talents, intelligence, biochemistry, anatomy, and so on. Language is a good example. They all are equally capable of intelligent communication, but may speak a different language. The snowflakes are all equal in their base structure, a hexagon, which makes them snowflakes. They are all unequal in their individual secondary structural attributes. Attributes that are equal should be treated equally. Attributes that are unequal should be treated unequally. How can things be both equal and unequal at the same time? Isn't that a violation of the identity axiom?
The answer to that question goes back to the old pattern of varying definitions for the same word. The more important the word, the more conflict you can expect around the definition. Whenever someone says equal, we should train ourselves to say, which type of equality are you talking about? The first definition of equality is equality of kind. This equality comes from nature. It could also be called metaphysical equality. For humankind, it is a set of potentialities possessed by everyone that can be activated, or not, in a multitude of different ways. Mortimer Adler said,
"By being human, we are equal. Equal as persons, equal in our humanity. One individual cannot be more or less human than another, more or less of a person. The dignity we attribute to being a person rather than a thing is not subject to difference in degree. The factual basis for the correct view is biological. All members of any biological species, human or otherwise, are alike in possessing the properties or powers that are genetically determined attributes of that species of living organism. The truth of the proposition that all human beings are by nature equal is confined to the one respect in which that equality can be truly affirmed, their having species-specific properties. There is no other respect in which all human beings are equal."
Equality of kind means that yourself and others are both equally human with the same life requirements and same basic natural human rights. The second definition of equality is equality of condition. Instead of nature, this form of equality comes from nurture. It is that which is alterable by us. Humans may share many potentialities, but not the same actualities. Mortimer Adler said,
"Individual members of a species differ from one another either by innate endowment, genetically determined, or by voluntary attainment, individually acquired. From the individual differences arise the inequalities in degree that make one individual superior or inferior to another in some particular respect. These differences come, first of all, from differences in native endowment. Another explanation of the different degrees of ability looks to what use individuals make of their inborn talents and aptitudes, the degree to which, by their own efforts, they fulfill their innate capacities. Still, another explanation lies in the favorable or unfavorable circumstances under which individuals make the effort to develop themselves."
To illustrate the difference in these two types of equality, ask yourself the question, are the two Mortimer Adlers shown here equal? Yes, from an equality of kind perspective, they are both the human being named Mortimer Adler. But from equality of condition perspective, their actual condition is not the same. One is younger and less wise. The other is older and more experienced.
Failing to differentiate between equality of kind and equality of condition leads to conflicts of justice. Egalitarianism is an application of the social good theory of justice. The destructive philosophy of egalitarianism arises from a particular proposal on how one proposes to deal with inequality of condition. A Theory of Justice is a 1971 work of political philosophy and ethics by John Rawls, in which the author addresses the problem of distributive justice, the socially just distribution of goods in a society. The theory utilizes an updated form of Kantian philosophy and a variant form of conventional social contract theory. John Rawls said,
"No one deserves his greater natural capacity, nor merits a more favorable starting place in society."
John Rawls argues that the inequality of native talents and abilities are undeserved and unmerited. Consequently, Rawls proposes fixing what he claims nature unjustly endowed. Rawls develops what he claims are principles of justice through the use of an artificial device he calls the original position, in which everyone decides principles of justice from behind a veil of ignorance. This veil is one that essentially blinds people to all facts about themselves, so they cannot tailor principles to their own advantage. According to Rawls, ignorance of these details about oneself will lead to principles that are fair to all. John Rawls said,
Among the essential features of this situation, original position, is that no one knows his place in society, his class position or social status, nor does anyone know his fortune in the distribution of natural assets and abilities, his intelligence, strength, and the like. I shall even assume that the parties do not know their conceptions of the good or their special psychological propensities. The principles of justice are chosen behind a veil of ignorance.
Walking the tree from politics back down to the lower foundational branches of philosophy reveals the problem. What did we learn in epistemology about selective ignoring of facts of reality? What did we learn in metaphysics about identity? In order to influence politics, Rawls makes a direct assault on metaphysics and is ultimately at war with agency. Forcing equality in metaphysics is an obvious absurdity. Rawls himself correctly points out the metaphysical reality that people are endowed at birth with different innate capacities. Rawls employs willful ignorance of the fact that humans are endowed with agency as part of their human identity and that people will never use their agency equally. We should by now be able to recognize the same old primacy of consciousness attacks on reason. Some obvious questions we should ask are, once someone has chosen a veil of ignorance and abandoned all knowledge as their epistemology, by what means do they then make any choices? The false premise of a veil of ignorance leads to the horrific argument for the tyranny of an authoritarian state which will ignorantly be trusted to level the playing field for everyone. It is a deadly epistemological and ethical device to implement state over man through collectivism. Rawls is essentially arguing that your chances of well-being are better off under ignorance and tyranny, so you are better off losing yourself to the collective. Who do you think is the primary target beneficiary of Rawls' theory of justice? His answer is the essence of the deadly social good definition of justice.
Social and economic inequalities are to be arranged so that they are to be of the greatest benefit to the least advantaged members of society, consistent with the just savings principle.
Rawls' theory of justice is to force everyone to progress only as fast as the slowest person in the collective society. His theory is to rearrange the economy to benefit those with the least natural abilities or environmental advantages.
Does anyone really believe that willful ignorance will eliminate the metaphysical differences of native talent, intelligence, and ability in the original position that Rawls is complaining about? Ayn Rand said,
"The new theory of justice demands that men counteract the injustice of nature by instituting the most obscenely unthinkable injustice among men, deprive those favored by nature, the talented, the intelligent, the creative, of the right to the rewards they produce, and grant to the incompetent, the stupid, the slothful, a right to the effortless enjoyment of the rewards they could not produce, could not imagine, and would not know what to do with." Of special significance to the present discussion is the egalitarians' defiance of the law of causality, their demand for equal results from unequal causes or equal rewards for unequal performance.
instead of lifting mankind, egalitarianism is the leveling of mankind to the lowest common denominator. Egalitarians claim an injustice in nature, confusing metaphysics with politics, but then attempt to replace it with an even worse injustice. Egalitarians fail to recognize that equality must be tempered by the natural rights definition of justice. Mortimer Adler said,
Should society ignore the fact that human beings are unequal as well as equal in both their endowments and attainments, and that they make unequal contributions to the welfare of the community? One individual may put his native endowments to work in the production of wealth or other goods, while another with equal endowments may squander his talents producing less. With regard to individuals who make unequal contributions by the work they do or the goods they produce, justice may call for an inequality of results in the rewards they receive.
The argument for egalitarianism can only be made by dropping context of some essential parts of reality. Egalitarianism willfully ignores the two different contexts of equality, nature and nurture. Those who do not nurture the same effort or development of talents have no right to equal benefits. Egalitarianism was exactly the plan Satan attempted to enforce in premortality. Like the dodo race, from Alice in Wonderland, individual effort and agency was to be ignored, with equal prizes for all. With respect to regulating equality, justice has two parts: proportionally treating equals equally as well as treating unequals unequally.
Throughout history, many thought leaders have pointed out the practical absurdity of trying to implement egalitarianism. Spinoza said,
"He who seeks equality between unequals seeks an absurdity."
Mortimer Adler said,
All members of a society may be equal in kind as halves in a certain respect, but they may also be unequal in degree, one being a half more, another a half less. There is no sense in saying that human beings ought to regard themselves as personally equal in all important respects when they know the fact to be quite the contrary. A second reason for rejecting the extremism of the egalitarian is its practical unfeasibility. If all individuals or all families were somehow to come into possession of the same amount of wealth, the absolute equality would not last long. A magic wand would be needed, not only to bring it into existence, but also to make it endure. No one has ever worked out a plan whereby, short of magic, this extreme form of economic equality might become feasible.
President Brigham Young said,
Supposing that the property of the whole community were divided today equally amongst all, what might we expect? Why, a year from today, we should need another division, for some would waste and squander it away, while others would add to their portion.
As Brigham Young and others correctly point out, under Satan's silly plan of egalitarianism, we would continually need to repeat the egalitarians' false redistribution leveling scheme constantly, as people naturally separate afterwards due to differences in self-initiative and application of their talents. Constant leveling of those who excel down to the level of those who do not excel would be a destroyer of individual agency and initiative. Any society embracing such egalitarianism eventually becomes impoverished as it slips into social loafing and runs out of other people's money to redistribute. Although humankind are all equal in endowment of agency, there will always be differences in how each individual unequally applies their agency to gain their final reward. If we are going to have agency, we are going to have inequality of outcome. For this reason, justice must temper equality.
Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe to the Christian Eternalism YouTube channel and visit christianeternalism.org